try it again here. So Morchella is the scientific name of morels, and I'm not going to try to keep up with their name changing all the time. This is the oldest photograph I could come up with of people hunting morels back in the 20s. Those are black morels up in Michigan. And a little bit of heritage is, you know, Asians have been picking medicinal mushrooms for probably 5,000 years or more. Reishi and several other ones. And Europeans have done it in their generations for many, many years. And then we basically, most of us settled over here from Europeans, and so there's very few morels in Europe, but they came over here, and there's a lot of places with morels here, and some of the mushrooms that they have there, they don't have a lot of here, and so they probably saw these morels, and at some point they said, oh, we'll try them or whatever, and they kill them, and they tasted good, so it kind of went from there. Michigan has the oldest Morel Mushroom Festival in Point City. It's about 55 years. So it's been going on a long time. The Peak of the Dead Elm series started probably in the 60s, I'd say. Back then, there was all sorts of areas that basically you just get wheelbarrows and so many dying elms. Now, like New England, all the elms are pretty well gone, very few left. In this area, there's still some, in like Indiana, Ohio. You got some places that are just none left. Illinois starts to be more. So probably the best states left are Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota for dead elms. Elms that are dying. But anyway, moving on. I've always had a 35mm camera ever since I was a kid. This is way back a long time ago when I lived in Indiana. I called those yellow sponge, and then the gray ones I called gray sponge. And back then I thought they were two different species, but you know, this one here will turn yellow with age, and you'll see that with the grow study stuff later. It's the same species, just different stages. Morel tattoos, I became entirely addicted when I got my first tattoo, the one on the left there. That was about 4 years ago. And now I've got a bunch of mushroom tattoos all over my arm. So I've got Hen of the Woods, Chicken of the Woods, Lion in Maine. I've got several other Morel tattoos, the Indian is a Morel tattoo now. And several other ones. So I just, I love, you know, I don't go out and get a tattoo for no reason. Everything has a reason, you know, a meaning behind it and all that. So I know some people will just drink too much and go out and just get a dumb tattoo or something. Yeah. But every one of mine has a very specific meaning. And when I got mine like 4 or 5 years ago, there was only just a few that I knew of that had Morel tattoos. And, you know, in the member areas of the site, there's I don't know how many of you have really investigated, but there's so much information in there. Anything from just general hunting tips to recipes, but there's very intense specific things. Like, I mean, I have a collection of people's tattoos, Morel tattoos. I have a postage stamp collection to go see them, and then I'll go behind some really neat stuff that takes me weeks to do all of it. But since then, since I got mine, there's like a bunch of them have dropped up. That's my other one. I got to put my sticker in my Morel instead of muscle. And that's a blue indigo milky. It's also green eggs, little scrambled eggs with it, and it also takes blue Alfredo sauce. And then this is the newest one I got with the oak tree with the chicken in the woods, and it's got the hen of the woods at the bottom. And then here's some other people that just cropped up over the last few years. Chanterelles and pearls. And that's Tom Polk. He's the head of the mycology department in Wisconsin. He's got an entire wing developed for medicinal mushrooms and really making some breakthroughs on some of the stuff. It's helping people with cancer and all kinds of ailments. And those are actual, I get mixed up. One of his arms is nothing but mycelium, and the other one is like microscopic spores or something. Yeah, these are some stamps that I've ran across, and I've got a pretty big collection now. Morels all over the place. License plates. Stamps all over. Globe, Morels. Mushroom festivals all over the country. This one here is in Indiana, and they have an auction every year, and they auction off bags of like half-pound bags of morels. And all those coolers here are full of bags of morels. And that particular year, I was one of the inspectors, and I had to go through and make sure they were true morels and that they were not spoiled and things like that. Some people, now when I was a kid, I was taught wrong, by my grandmother or parents or whatever. But as soon as I'd pick them, I would take them back home and immediately rinse them off, put them in a bowl of salt water, and let them soak, and I would keep them in the refrigerator in a bowl of salt water and just leave them like that for days at a time. And that's the worst thing you can possibly do. And still to this day, there are people that do that, and it starts deteriorating right on the back. So it's just not a good thing to do. So there was like a little old couple that thought they were going to make a couple $100 at this, and I held up their bags, and there was an inch of water standing in the bottom, so obviously they'd been soaked, and that's just, and I had to reject them. I felt bad, but I mean, it's just people have to learn. And then some other people had pulled them up by the roots, and there was just full of dirt and stuff. And why would you want to have dirt in your bag anyway? So let alone the destruction of the process. So this was in Illinois last year. Some of them have, they load up buses and take a 90-minute championship hunt. They'll take it to the mushroom spot, and whoever finds those morels in 90 minutes gets $500 or whatever the prize is. It's a pretty big festival out there. That's an option going on in Illinois. There's festivals up in Michigan. I ran to that hotel up in Michigan. Those are some chainsaw carved morels I saw that got auctioned off. I've been doing the guided hunt since 2001. This was probably 7-8 years ago in Georgia, and the lady there with the walker, her name's Margaret, and she's a diehard morel hunter. And I met her the year before up in Michigan at a festival, and she had entered the contest up in Michigan and came in first in the women's division. And then she rode a motorcycle, and she was in a motorcycle accident, so she's going to be on a walker the rest of her life. And she called me up and said, Chris, is there any place in Georgia that you could take me like the day before the fray that's like a morel is like real close to the road, because it's been like 4 or 5 years since I've seen one in the wild, and I just want to see one in the wild again. And I said, yeah, I could, I probably got a place like that. So I loaded her and her husband up, and we went to a spot that was probably 75 feet off the road. I knew there was a couple of morels there. And it was hard getting her through the grapevines and the stickers, just that little bit of distance with the walker. But as soon as we got up close there, she saw immediately the one that I spotted and a couple that I didn't even see. So she's a good hunter. And just to see her, her face light up and everything. And, so she had a great time. And so then it was the year later, me and my friend that passed away, we were driving around my truck and she's from Pennsylvania, by the way, but we were up in the boondocks of Michigan on this really a snowmobile trail. But I was in my 4-wheel drive truck, and I was just busting through, I was scratching and all hell and everything else. But we were looking for good spots, to find morels up there in the middle of nowhere. And I'm driving along, and I see way up ahead, there's this lady in a walker, walking around, hobbling around. And I thought, the only person I know in a walker is Margaret. I know it can't be her. And I get up there, and sure enough, she had paid somebody in a 4-wheel drive to drop her off and pick her up a couple hours later. She was by herself, just out there walling around. She had a bag of Morels, and she had my shirt on that she bought at my foray. So that whole story's in my Morel Secrets book. But so anyway, so the story doesn't end there. It actually just beginning. So I apparently at that point she must have put a GPS in my car, because we ran into her 2 or 3 other times in the middle of nowhere in various places. I mean, she did, and it's just a coincidence. It's just crazy, but anything, including my friend that passed away, we had this secret place, campsite we went to every year, and there were like always 3 ash trees that just flushed anywhere from 50 to 200 morels under each of them, and there's like 3 or 4 of them right around that, and it was like up a hill, and then it flattened out. It was a perfect campsite. It wasn't easy to get to at all. So we would meet there every year, and then this one year, I wasn't able to make it quick enough, and he got there before I did, and he said, Chris, I'm gonna have to get them picked because somebody's gonna wander in here and find these, and there's a bunch of them this year.
Yeah, but Margaret's crazy. She goes everywhere.
Yeah, and so anyway, he left me. There was like a triple that was right by the tent, and he put like a little stick teepee over those just to leave them for me when I got there. And then he would go out during the day and hunt other areas, and then come back at night. And so it was like 3 or 4 more days before I got there. And but he came back one night into camp from hunting, and there was a little note attached to the teepee, and it said, "This is really cool. You're watching your morels grow and everything, and I'm a big time hunter, and my name's Margaret, and if here's my phone number. If you want to call me, I'll come and have a drink with you tonight." And immediately he said, "There's no way that could be the same Margaret." Well, sure it was. She had found our secret spot that was, I'm talking, I don't know how she got back there in a walker, but he called her up, and she came back, and they had a couple shots of whiskey, and talked about good old times or whatever, and then last year we were on a foray, and somebody at the Missouri foray was on that foray, and we ran into Margaret then too, and she ended up eating some of my sandwiches I had left over. So anyway, she called me up a couple weeks ago, and I said, "Well, I got a new vehicle now, so the GPS is gone." That was a Travel Channel foray. So 2001 was my first foray, and it was in Knoxville, and Pauline and Cyrus Randall attended that foray, and they followed me from the very beginning, when I first started, and apparently they can see the quadruplets on my Knoxville foray. So that was a year later, but yeah, we're like extended family, and I'm Uncle Chris and Lavina, and now they're growing up. They're growing up now. Now this was still like 6 years ago. They're 14 now, so but they probably know more about edible plants and mushrooms than all of you in here.
Not Cyrus.
Yeah. But yeah, the girls they were raised in the woods, and they got I've been with them a lot and taught them stuff. But anyway, they're real cool girls. There's some tailgate photos, fall and spring. This was that first one was Indiana fall last year. That's Ohio fall last year.
That was a blast.
And that was Washington fall foray, chanterelles and lobsters. This was this spring in Georgia, and that was just the morning hunt. That wasn't the afternoon. That's the morning and afternoon in one day. And a couple weeks ago we had the next Garth Brooks. Now here they playing again. That's great. We had it playing just a minute ago. You know, he has a really good voice, and I mean, and he's got a single out right now that's in the top 40. So,
What is it?
it's C.J. Garten, and he lives in Nashville, and we're talking about doing a musical foray next year in Nashville. He's got all kinds of land, private land to hunt on there. So,
What's the song?
it has West Virginia in it.
You remind no, that's
I got something about coal mining and stuff like that. I got the CD out of the car. This is the food for the forays. You're gonna get this tomorrow. There'll be all kinds of appetizers and soup, and that's pokeweed. I haven't seen any of that today. Stuffed jalapenos, dandelion blossoms. That's my mushroom bruschetta. So morel habitats, each part of the country, morels grow in a different part of a different kind of condition. I'm from Indiana, and I would find them on the hills under certain trees, and then I lived in the South for several years, and I was in Georgia for 3 years before I even figured it out. You know, that they don't grow like they do in Indiana. And just by chance that I just happened upon, I couldn't even believe it. You know, and now that I found that condition, there's probably the best hunting in the country, and there's just so many thousands of pounds of old weight that people don't know about. There are long creeks under ash trees in the floodplain zones, like in the sandy soil. A lot of privet. It's like a evergreen bush down there that's just thick as could be in bottomland and stuff. That's where they grow in Georgia. That's an ash tree. And dead elm, you know, we were looking at them today, and the ones we found, I think, were under dead elm for the most part. The ones I found this afternoon, there's about 30 under one dead elm. You can tell elm, it has grayish bark and kind of scaly bark, but you know, it always has like a limb with the bark peeling. Also, the limbs going up Y. You know, one Y here, one Y there, and a Y down there. Yeah, and whereas like ash, you know, the limbs go out horizontally and stuff like that. You know, that's one good way to tell. Old apple orchards, as an old apple stump, sometimes just hardly living apple trees at all. But it doesn't necessarily, you know, for years I had my luck in really old abandoned orchards. But I did a Morel foray up in Vermont a few years ago, and we went to organic orchards that the trees weren't no bigger around than like 8 inches or so, and there were still morels all over the place. So it didn't have to be a real old orchard, just organic. Cottonwood trees is another good one in certain parts of the country, especially out in like Kansas, Missouri. There'll be really large cottonwoods, and if they cut one down and it's struck by lightning, there could be a mother lode under a cottonwood. Poplar trees, the blacks that were found today this afternoon were under poplar. They're real straight. They also have diamond-shaped bark like ash.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, alright, so we're putting in does that not confuse you? Right?
The difference is the poplar trees are like straight poles with no limb until way up high. Yeah, they're leaving out right now, where the ash trees have more moss on the bark, plus the limbs start much lower and they're not leaving out whatsoever.
And the black walnut,
Black walnut has sort of diamond shape, but it's the bark itself is brown or dark, really dark. These are light.
way too
Looks like little cats.
too many diamond-shaped bullcrap.
So now I'm going to take a minute before I go on. So the reason that, for instance, the dead elm trees, that there's so much, there's a flush. So you understand the mushroom that we're picking is the fruiting body of the living organism underground. So there's like a series of fibers or networks. That's the living organism underground, and so we're picking the fruit of that living organism. And so that's why you don't want to yank them up by the roots, because when you pick an apple, you don't rip the limb off to pick the apple. So, and then what happens is, like, I think the very first Morel today was under a live elm, if I remember right. Seems like there was like one or two there under a live elm. So just the one. So what happens is, you'll find an occasional Morel or two under a good-sized living elm tree, but the living organism is already mycorrhizal with that tree. So what happens is, during droughts, the tree gets extra moisture from the extended fiber network of the mycelium, and then in turn the mycelium is living off of some of the nutrients of the tree. So it's like a symbiotic relationship. And so it's the mushroom organism is dependent on the tree for its survival. So when the tree gets Dutch elm disease, it's dying, and so is the mushroom organism. It's going to die too when the tree dies. And so when that tree dies, like we find one that the bark is still intact, it's just maybe barely slipping, it just died last year. That next spring is usually the best year of a flush, and so the mushroom organism wants to repopulate its species, so it puts every bit of its energy out that next year, and that's why they're just everywhere, and it's just trying to repopulate its species. And then the following year it's died off a lot, lost a lot of energy, because it's not getting nutrients from the tree, and there might be, where there was maybe 5 pounds under a big tree, now there's 4 mushrooms. In the third year you might get 1 mushroom or none, it just depends on the situation. And then the same with the forest fire, it's usually the fir trees, the conifer fir trees out west. Just imagine an entire forest of big dead elm trees. So all the mushroom mycelium was depending on all those trees. And now the entire forest is dead, so now you got all those giant flushes. So that's why it could be an entire carpet of morels, in the forest fire. Because I don't like to talk in front and with my back to people. This is a fire morel there. You can see the charred tree in the background.
Forest fire is always black.
Pardon? The mushroom?
Yes.
No, there's natural blondes. It's out in Oregon and Washington and Idaho, and there'll be those ones come up too. Sycamore, we looked under those today. I've never found like a mother lode under sycamore, but I found pretty decent flush under it. Shagbark hickories, sometimes black morels will grow under shagbarks. Long hickory chickens. Black cherries, in certain parts of the country. Sporadically through the Midwest, but up in New England more so. There's a lot of really large black cherries up in like Maryland and other parts of New England, and they'll be under the black cherries. Beech trees, never a mother lode ever, but I have to put it in here because growing up as a kid in Indiana, there was always about 5 beech trees when the season started, I would always go to them first, and when I saw some there, then I could look around other places. And there was always a dependent on being 3 or 4 under these same 5 beech trees. Sugar maples, believe it or not, morels seem to be adapting, and the elms are fading in some places, and then the ash borers taking out ash trees. But I've noticed them jumping into other trees in the last few years, and found a pretty nice flush in Illinois and also Maine under sugar maple. And then soft maple is pretty common along the creeks in Missouri and sometimes Iowa, Oklahoma, Kansas. Instead of there being ash trees or sycamore along the creeks, there's small clumps of soft maples, and there'll be morels along those soft maples. White pines, usually not in a wood, but like a 20 or 30 foot tall tree that's in somebody's landscaping or yard. They'll start finding them under the pine tree, and they'll be there every year. I got a guy in Ohio that he started finding them under his blue spruce that's about 30 foot tall, and they've been there every year. Cedars are, not a sure thing, but sometimes they will grow under cedars. And what happens is, like an example, I had an Illinois foray a few years ago, and there's like all kinds of dead elms there. There's a few ash, and they are. But there's this one hillside in the woods that we hunt in that's just an entire cedar grove. We weren't finding anything under dead elms, and I couldn't figure out why. And I said, well, I'm gonna go check the cedars. That's where they were that year, and I don't know what triggers that to go from one thing to another in the woods. But if I'm not having luck, in a particular year, I'll check some other condition or some other tree and see if they might be switching it up or something. But up in Texas, especially in some of Oklahoma areas, cedars and juniper, usually with limestone outcroppings, that's what they grow there. And that's just a natural black morel that grows in the fir trees out in out west. And I found black morels under red oak in Kentucky. These ones right here, I actually took pictures of those red oak trees there. And then this is a situation in Kansas that's happened a couple of times. DNR has these lakes and they don't want trees growing up. So every few years they burn off around the lake. And I had a friend several years back that was going fishing, and he called me up and he said, man, there's clumps of little baby morels, half-inch tall, coming up out of the grass that's was burned off last fall. And I said, really? And he took some pictures and sent them to me. And so, it looked prolific. So, 4 of us got up together about 2 weeks later because they were just babies, and I knew we had 2 weeks. And we spent a weekend. We got 120 pounds around a lake like that. And then clear cuts out west, they'll just take an entire hillside, cut every tree down. Again, it's like a forest fire. The tree's dead. Now the mushroom plant's going to die. And it's just not fun hunting in those snags. It's hard to get around and climb over and stuff. Railroad tracks, morels are definitely known to like limestone. I never had a lot of luck myself. I've heard many stories of people finding them along railroad tracks, but I have a friend in Indiana that has about probably a half mile of old railroad track that the tracks tore up, but it's still the limestone bed. And we went hunting, and there was 3 or 4 big morels right up on top, 50 feet away from any tree, right up on the very top of the limestone. And these are landscape morels. It's actually a different species of morel. It's the only one that are not mycorrhizal with trees. You put down fresh mulch the year before, and the following spring the spores are in the mulch and they grow through the winter and then fruit the following spring. And I've eaten these before. They're the most flavorless morels of any other species. I mean, they're okay, but they just don't taste that great. The timing, sometimes like today, morels are starting to come up a little bit. It snowed on us today, so you just never know. This is up in Michigan, and it actually snowed a couple inches, but the ground temperature is warm, so as long as it doesn't freeze hard, it's not going to damage it. When the ground temperature reaches 52 degrees, then the mushroom organism will start spreading out its little buds. Each mycelium has enough energy to produce so many different mushrooms, and say 15 mushrooms from the mycelium as well. An animal might walk over and knock 2 of them off. An insect might, or a snail might eat one when it's just a half-inch tall. It might come a freeze and knock some of them out. After they start coming up. So what you're left with is, depending on the condition, is the ones that didn't get damaged. It's kind of like the turtles being born. It takes a bunch of them to only have 2 or 3 to survive. So the earliest I found is February 26th down in Georgia, and then I found them October 2nd in 8,000 feet elevation in Idaho. And what happens in that situation? It's a burn site, and it might, in some of the mountains it might snow 30 or 40 feet, and by the time it melts off, all summer long it melts off, and the ground temperature warms up to 52 where it starts growing. It's almost winter. So when I found those ones were totally mature, but there was little babies coming up. But like 2 days after I left, it got down to like 18 degrees, so it knocked them out. But if it hadn't done that, they would have went all the way to November. I have some of these maps in the member areas, ground temperature maps and moisture maps. Sometimes you just have to drive if it's a drought. You have to drive a little bit to get where the moisture is. This one's got frostbite. It came up, and if it gets down to 27, 28 degrees for more than a couple hours, it will damage it. And a lot of times it'll just be black spots on the top. The weather's been messed up in the last several years. I mean, that was February 26th all the way up to British Columbia, Canada, and premature mushrooms. It's just a crazy weather pattern that we've been having. But some of the indicators, you got the red buds blooming. Usually when the red buds are at full bloom, there's definitely black morels out for sure. And by the time the dogwoods are blooming, then you got yellow morels. Now, I've seen dogwoods getting started, not totally full like that one, but there's some red ones. Yeah, I saw some pink ones. So I mean, we're about the right timing, but I think for whatever reason, it's maybe a week off. Because when the dogwoods are blooming as much as they are, there should be a bit more mature mushrooms. The blacks we found today are almost gone. They're so old. So it's kind of just in between right now. Lilac's another good one to look for.
For yellows.
Yeah. The daffodils blooming. There's a few things. When you're picking, you want to beat Johnny Appleseed and use mesh bags. It just makes sense that the spores are falling out, as you're walking. And also, plastic bags will condensate and can spoil your mushrooms. So, it's just not recommended to use plastic bags whatsoever. Now, you can keep them in plastic bags for a short period of time. Like, once you get back to your car, if you want to keep them from getting, like if you have ice water in your cooler, you want to keep them from getting soaking wet, with a mesh bag, just put them in plastic and put them in there for just the ride back to home or whatever, but you don't leave them in plastic for very long. Those are actual spore prints from the second Georgia foray. We laid them out on the trunk of a car, and within 20 minutes they get spore printed like that. And the mushrooms were laying there, and that's what the spores came out. And that's slick paint. And Morel spores are very spiky. If you look under a microscope, they don't just float out and just go like that. They actually stick real tight. And that right there, I took my finger and rubbed it across there, and it didn't even come off. I mean, it's stuck. They're sticky. So it's just it's a misconception to think that the mushroom is sitting right here and in the wind they just float out. But that does not happen. They actually fall pretty straight down and all that. So that's why mesh bags are really important. You want to slice them off or pinch them off. Don't yank them. This was one of the reports this year on my site. And obviously them people didn't know any better or whatever, but like I said, you don't rip the apple tree limb right off when you're picking the apples, so that's what they were doing. So this is a life cycle. Oh no, this is forgot the extra video. This is an easy way to store freeze your mushrooms. This is a microscopic thing I got of a little larva eating it. That's down inside of a morel pit. This is some areas have these little hoppy bugs, but that's an actual little larva, which is not even visible by the naked eye. And I just was playing with this microscope thing, and I said, oh my God, there's a daggone little larva there. It was just chewing away. Soaking them in salt water is okay, as long as you keep them in your refrigerator in a brown paper bag and just close the bag up. Just roll the bag on the top, so it's closed. And then 15 minutes before you're getting ready to use them, just rinse them off, slice them in half, and put a little bit of salt water on them if you want, just for a few minutes, but not any longer than that. And that'll pretty much get rid of all these kind of bugs like here. You can dry the morels. That's great in soups and pastas and stuff like that, and sauces. And then you can freeze them. This is how I freeze them if I'm just going to slice them in half and then bread them in flour and fry them. Freeze them individually on a cookie sheet. They'll keep a couple years like that if you do that. And as I said before, don't thaw them out. Just have the butter sizzling and open your bag and drop the frozen mushrooms right in there, and it'll be almost like fresh. So false morels, we found a few of those today. That's the gyrometro. Usually they come before black morels even. So we found fresh ones of those today, and we found old black morels, so it's just kind of a messed up season. There's different species of false morel. Those are the Carolina, and they get really big. This is a grow study of black morels over a 2-week period. Starts off at 2 inches. As it gets bigger. Now it's up to 4 1/4, and then it starts withering away. That was a 2-week period. And it started off at 2 inches, so it's probably up for a week already. Black morels come up first. They have reddish brown ridges that turn to black ridges with age. You have the half-free morel. Those are pretty common around here. How many have seen them before? Yeah. So the half-frees right here, this is a verpa, it's not a half-free. These aren't very common here, they're up in Michigan and out west. And the half-free over here is completely hollow, it is a true morel. The one on the right the stem is full of cottony substance. And it's not hollow, but I eat the caps of that one too. The first edible mushroom book was written like in the 50s, and apparently the author of that book said might have had a friend that had some reaction to eating verpas that didn't kill him or nothing, but it was just some stomach upset or whatever. So he wrote that in the book about verpas, and basically everyone after that plagiarized and just said the same thing about verpas without actually having their own knowledge. But to be perfectly honest, I've guided over 2,000 people now, and I don't know one person that ever said they were allergic to a verpa, but I know a dozen people that are allergic to eating morels. So I've eaten them before. We've eaten them on forays before. I don't like the cottony substance in the stem, but I'll just pop the cap off and they have a pretty good flavor. These are more half-frees. They can get pretty tall. And this is a deliciosa. They're not real common here. They're more in Georgia, Kentucky, Tennessee, southern Indiana, and Ohio. More over by Cincinnati. I don't know if they grow here at all, actually, but it's a small, slender type morel. They don't get real big. They're gray also when they're young and turn into yellow. You can see all different stages of growth there. the same ridge line all the way down. That same ridge goes all from top to bottom. Whereas on the bigger yellow morels, they're just all over the place. Those are actually spores. Mushrooms there. You can see the spores over here are sticking right to the breeze there. Like I said, they're very spiky. They don't just float away. And this is a growth study of the species. Those two, 4 days later, and a week later, and 2 days later. This was in Mississippi, and it actually was like 95 degrees. And that kind of temperature, they still grew. So hot and dry. And this is the escalenas. This is what. Escalena. I did this one in Georgia a few years ago. So this is 2.5 inches. That's about as big as the biggest one we found today, and that's probably almost a week old already, out of the ground. And this is over another 2 weeks, and it just gradually loses its gray color, turns tan, and then golden yellow. It goes from 2.5 inches up to 6 inches in another 2 weeks of growth. This is another growth study I did. One thing I've done is, or noticed that in the growth studies there are like right here. These are, I mean, that's a 1/4 of an inch tall. That one right there, and there's 3 there. There'll be the early birds, and then all of a sudden there's another one appears, and that last one that appears grows faster and catches up or even exceeds the first one. There's still 3 there. Now there's 4. That was like 16 or 17 day period. And then this is an actual time-lapse photography. And the mycelium has so much energy, and if there's adequate moisture, this time-lapse shows 3 mushrooms coming up. And it was a drought, and there was no rain whatsoever. So you got one here, one there, and there's one hiding right there. And with no rain, the mycelium cuts off the energy to 2 of the 3 mushrooms. So this one fades away, and that one fades away, and it put all its energy into the back because there was no rain during that time period. That's 15 days. You know, morels grow up to 3 weeks. A couple of you said that you left them grow and they dried up. You know, keep trying. You know, there's different reasons that if it doesn't rain, or if it doesn't rain, or if there's a cold spell, or there's just different things that can cause that. But I mean, I've had people say that they had them on their property. They found like 1 inch grays. They left them for a week, came back, no growth whatsoever. They're still perfectly intact. But I'm guessing that it was a cold spell. Like right now, they're not going to grow right now. Whatever size they are right now, tomorrow they're going to be the same size, and probably the next day. They'll just sit there that size and wait for the temperature to warm up, and things like that. So, there's got to be some more factor involved for them not to grow. The escalenas are white or gray ridges when they're young. They can get huge and turn into golden yellow. Sometimes they're odd shaped and perfect shaped. Situation. Same situation you got. This time the deer didn't knock some off, it didn't freeze 1 or 2 out. The mycelium sent up a clump like that. You got all them mushrooms, So what happens in a clump is you never see a clump of giants like that because it only has so much energy. So you have the same volume of mushroom in that many smaller ones as just one like that. It just depends on the situation. The mycelium has a certain amount of energy to put out the mushroom spores and all that, and so depending on the situation, it can make one big mushroom or a clump of them if it's perfect conditions. And you probably know, like fruit farmers, they'll go pick little peaches off, or even some of the apples off, so there's more thin them out, so they'll be bigger. It's kind of the same thing. Is that if they all stay alive, then they're not going to get very big. Whereas if it's just one or two, even on the mycelium, it can get really big. This is the strangest morel species on the planet. It's the Blackfoot morel. It does not occur naturally. It's not stained from the black fire char stuff. It's actually that color. It has a velvety covering on it when it's young. And this one only occurs after a forest fire. So whether the spores are sitting dormant or whatever the situation is, we don't know. We tried to find out. But in a forest that is a living forest today, and you try to find this one, it's not there, period, naturally, and then it burns this summer, it'll be there next year. We just don't know why. But this one grows longer than any of them. It actually grows for 6 weeks. It goes from that black right there to a golden yellow. The ones you saw on October 2nd, they were like a golden yellow. That's the same species. It goes from pitch black to golden yellow in about 6 weeks.
So I've got an area by me, a little over 100 acres that burned last year, so there's a chance I might find some of those.
Where are you located?
This year here in southern West Virginia.
Is it conifer?
It's kind of mixed. I mean, part of it is coniferous forest, part of it is deciduous forest.
If it's coniferous that burn, then it's possible. Up until even a few years ago, the only place that burned morels occurred was out west in Canada. But the Upper Peninsula of Michigan about 5 years ago had a fire, and again 2 years ago, and they occurred up there, even this species did. And then last year, or the year before, there was a fire in North Carolina, and last year I had somebody in that area checking it out, and darn it, we didn't get a bunch of morels in that conifer forest.
It's mainly hemlock and it's a few white pines in there and the first part of it that burns. So I think it might be a
It's
possibility.
definitely possible. Well, most of you have seen this show. I had, for whatever reason, my sound isn't working on when I have the projector going, but I'm not going to play that right now. I can play it after we're done here and just not use the same setup. Anybody have any questions? Sometimes you have to dress up in like a sniper to find them.
So
Put it on the gillies.
the sclerota of the morel, it's kind of like a truffle underground. It's where the energy goes.
Right.
Have you ever find any of those?
I have a couple times. Actually, just this year I've got, just by accident, there was a tree uprooted, and it was like, mycelium and sclerota and everything was pulled up by the root, and I got it, and I got photographs of it.
Best soup I've ever had in my life. It's amazing.
Well, you guys picked them, so I put them in. You got
It's
a lot of
incredible. You're an incredible cook.
a lot of stuff in there. Glad you enjoy it.